This little girl, before she ever learned to speak, she learned to listen to her grandfather's stories, to her single mother's pain and struggles, and to the voices of a world too afraid to embrace her. This little girl learned shame before strength, silence in place of safety, invisibility as protection, and survival before peace. She carried the weight of poverty and systemic oppression, and in one terrifying moment, her story would be forever changed. At 16 years old, she was a little rebellious and a little carefree. And when she met him, she thought that she had finally found true love. But they argued more than they talked, and a dangerous anger grew within him. And louder it became over time until one day, it was something far different than she ever could have imagined. In that instant, his anger switched to extreme violence. She couldn't understand what was happening. It was all too fast. And the only reason she made it out alive during that horrific moment was because someone had intervened just in time. Her wounds and bruises eventually healed, but the shame, silence, and invisibility that took root in her heart that day did not heal for a very long time. And soon those unhealed wounds took over the pen and began to write her story, defining it by that one tragic moment. That little girl, that survivor, she is me. Trauma tried to write my story, but I decided to take the pen back. I remembered my voice. I remembered who I am. And I continue to rewrite my story every single day. And I'm here to share with you how you can rewrite yours too. Every single one of us will go through challenging experiences in our lives, through an illness, a tragedy, a loss. And these moments, these experiences can truly change and alter our lives and even flip our worlds upside down sometimes. And it's from that moment on, we get to decide. We get to choose how we will move forward. We get to choose how our stories continue to be written. And it's easy to let our circumstances define us. I certainly did for a very long time. But what if I told you that your life story is really defined by what you choose to include in it? That the story of your life could change in the very moment you choose to believe that it can. That's the truth. We are the only ones who have the power to define who we are, not our circumstances. And we can pick up the pen at any time and rewrite our story. And while, yes, we cannot rewrite the past, we cannot rewrite what happened to us, but we can rewrite the path forward. But that only begins when you embrace that you have the power of choice, when you believe it can be done, when you know fully and can give yourself that permission to rewrite the parts of your story that may be holding you hostage in your own life. That moment, the moment you find the courage and the strength to reclaim what is already yours, everything changes, and you can begin to unlearn and heal. I was gifted a love for storytelling by my grandfather, my papa, who used to read stories to me and sing to me when I was a little girl. And his deep and healing connection to storytelling inspired me. And so I started to write fiction from as young as I can remember. And while most kids enjoyed recess and playtime, I fell in love with writing stories. And I found so much healing in being able to craft these incredible worlds, these narratives that had no boundaries. It was my happy place. And when my world grew chaotic and uncontrollable, stories were my strength and sanctuary. And it was through my stories I envisioned what was possible, and I dreamt big. Stories helped me conquer the pain and the trauma that I endured. Stories helped me see myself as a warrior and gave me the courage to speak my truth, not just on paper, but eventually out loud. And these stories saved my life. Storytelling saved my life because I saw myself in the stories. I believed I was the warrior, and I grew with confidence, and I believed in who she was until I eventually became her. The stories we tell ourselves become our lived experiences. So what are the stories that you are telling yourself? Are you building yourself up, or are you tearing yourself down with the stories that you tell? The stories that you tell not only shape who you are, who you're becoming, but they can also become a source of wisdom and inspiration for others too. As an Indigenous woman and trauma survivor, shame, silence, and invisibility were the molds the world believes I was meant to stay in. And had I actually allowed myself to stay confined to those molds, my story would look very, very different today. The sad reality is that Indigenous women experience disproportionate levels of violence, and that is a direct connection to generational trauma and attempted erasure. And too often our stories go unheard. And too often our stories never get told. And too often false narratives like stigmas and stereotypes are fabricated based on fear and ignorance. Stories that are far from the truth of who we are as people. And how many of us have experienced hearing stories told about us instead of by us? And when that happens, so much truth and context can get lost in those stories, sometimes even lies. And when we think about our own lives in this way, we must ask ourselves the question, what is the story that we want to tell? What is the story that we want to be remembered by? Reclaiming your voice, your truth, is one of the most powerful steps toward breaking free and being able to reclaim and rewrite your story. And that means taking back control of your own narrative, telling your own story your way and with your truth. It's being seen and known and heard and never forgetting that you are the narrator in your story, no one else. Remember that our voices, our stories, are our strength. When I began doing the slow and sacred and uncomfortable work of healing, I realized that I had created a version of myself that wasn't really true to who I really was. And because of the hardship that I experienced in my childhood and because of the trauma that I went through, I realized that I had crafted a version of myself that wanted to feel safe. And that meant staying hidden and quiet, invisible, and behind the curtain, all as a result of holding shame and refusing to let go of the painful parts of my story. That was until I decided that those parts, those things were not mine to carry anymore. And with every decision to release the parts of my story where pain held a pin, I began to break the cycle. And now, truthfully, it took many years, lots of tears, lots of support, lots of unlearning, and of course, lots of chocolate cake and ice cream. Rewriting my story looked like learning how to speak about what happened, learning how to find my voice, learning to see myself with truth, learning to be uncomfortable, to grow, learning to take up space, learning how to share my story to help others, And it was also challenging the fears that kept me stagnant, challenging the odds and statistics that said, not likely, challenging the doubt that said, not enough, challenging the spaces that said, I don't belong, and finally letting go of all of the fears and all of the doubt and everything that held me back and reclaiming my voice again. You must release the parts of your story that are no longer serving you. And the moment that you do, you make room for what does. And that's the fun and creative part of writing your story. When I was able to heal and release what no longer served me, that's when I was able to take back the pen and start rewriting, starting with how I wanted my life to look, by acting on my dreams, believing in the possibilities, and most importantly, believing in me. Until we dare to be seen, until we show up and share our story and truth, only then are we set free. That is the power of embracing your story, owning your narrative, releasing what no longer serves you. This is how we reclaim what has always been ours, our voice, our story. And only then can we break the molds, the cycles, the systems, and everything that is meant to hold us back from who we are meant to be. When I think about that little girl, I often wonder what she would think if she knew how far she had come. What she would feel to know that she created so much light from so much darkness, and that she was able to break free of the molds of shame and silence and invisibility. But now, I don't have to wonder any longer because I am here. I am strong. I am resilient. I speak my truth. I am breaking cycles and bringing forward a story of resilience that will be here long after I'm gone. My story will be part of the stories told about my people. And it will honor those who never had a chance to tell theirs. My story will bring hope and light to those who need it. So, what story will you choose? What story will you believe in? What story will be yours to tell, and what will they remember about you? Pick up your pen, reclaim your voice, speak your truth, break the molds. In my language, Mado,